partnership with the Missouri Historical Society continues. We are so happy to bring you these historic vignettes. We're talking about people, places, and things, if you will, that have made history and that are a part of our history here in St. Louis. Now, that being said, another podcast is coming, so you have to do all the things I've always instructed you to do. You can go to our YouTube channel, 9pbs.org. You can get a link straight from the website and see previous podcasts and previous conversations about history. This is an incredible partnership. I'm so honored to do anything. They could call me to come and take the trash out, and I would. That is the Missouri Historical Society. Cicely Hunter is back. She is the public historian with the African American Initiative. Thank you, Cicely.
Thank you so much, Carol.
Now, she's done her homework. Their homework is to subscribe, to share, to like, and to leave a comment. Is that a lot? Is that too much?
I don't think so. I think it's fabulous.
It's
work.
doable.
Yeah.
It's all doable.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to put my eyes on for this one because we have been talking about a variety of historical figures, and this one I relate to.
Okay.
Because my father is a Vietnam veteran. He passed away almost 2 years ago, but he did 2 tours in Vietnam, and today we talk about 2 in particular Vietnam veterans. There were some 300,000 African Americans who served in the Vietnam War. We're going to talk about 2 of them.
Yes, and there is a local connection too to these stories. And so I am so excited to share with you all today and with your listeners a little bit about Staff Sergeant Dierother Brown and Private Udell Chambers. To provide a point of entry into Black life here in St. Louis, but then also once they go overseas to the Vietnam War.
Okay.
And so we'll dive into Dierother Brown first. So he was born to Mr. and Mrs. A. James Brown on February 29th of 1944 here in St. Louis. So his family actually relocated. So this is where the Great Migration comes in.
Yes.
So his family relocated from Mississippi, and then they arrived here in St. Louis. So he actually attended Vashon High School. So shout out to all the Vashon.
Girl,
I know. I shouldn't start
You
anything.
should not start.
Let me stop.
This is Beaumont. I'm sorry. Ooh, this is Beaumont, not Vashon.
Let me stop.
Do not write me. Do not pick it. Don't.
Because people will.
People love their high schools in St. Louis, and I appreciate that.
Yes, I do too. I love it. So he actually did attend Vashon, and he played basketball, and he was even active as a member of the Red Cross Committee as well.
Okay.
So he did.
He was active. He was engaged.
Active. Yeah, for sure. And then he had enlisted in the United States Army on June 19th of 1963, and then was later discharged, of course, because of his death, and that would have been in 1968.
So he died in the war.
Yes, he did die in the war.
Was his body brought home? Do we know?
Yes, it was.
Which there's so many that were not, and that's why I asked that question.
Yeah, it's true. So his body was recovered in South Vietnam, and so he actually died during a hostile ground attack that took place. And he served as an armor intelligence specialist in Troop B, 1st Quadrant, 4th Cavalry Regiment in the 1st Infantry Division. And so, as you mentioned, this would have been roughly around the 10th offensive. So once his body was recovered, he was then brought to St. Louis and interned at Jefferson Barracks National Cemetery.
You make me think of 2 things in all of my reading about the Vietnam War and the few conversations I've had with my father, because many Vietnam veterans have not shared with their families the horrors of war. I can tell you, I remember my father having flashbacks and having nightmares, and you could hear this thud in the house in the middle of the night, and it would be him. And what we learned from my mother was he was having a flashback and thinking he was still in the war and diving into the foxhole.
Wow.
So he would dive out of bed and get on the floor thinking he was in a foxhole. The other thing that I was so, I suppose pleased is the word, but this is the 60s. He enlisted in 63. I was born in 62.
Okay.
And, we all know now what we felt about the war. There were those who were against the war and those who supported it. Yeah. And there were lies told by our government about how it was really going. But in the war, blacks and whites, men, there were friendships formed. There was still discrimination, but we now know that there were bonds that were formed in the Vietnam War between men who back here in St. Louis may not have ever become friends. Yeah, so we know those things happened, even though it was a horrible war and divided us as a nation. There were men who came to work with one another, fight with one another, who likely never would have done it before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. And my
Yeah.
granddad actually served in the Vietnam War, so he shares a few stories here and there. So I can understand.
Yeah,
What
absolutely,
you're talking
absolutely.
about specifically. Yeah. So he did receive several awards. So he received the Bronze Star Medal, the Silver Star Medal, as well as the Purple Heart. So he is
It
very
tells you
decorated.
what kind of soldier he was.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Certainly does. And now we'll segue into Private Udell Chambers, who was born to Tommy and Betty Chambers on February 22nd, 1948. And he actually lived with his family in Meacham Park, and he attended Kirkwood High School. And he gained notoriety as a star athlete, actually, in baseball. And so he was admired within his community for having this incredible personality as well as his skill set on the baseball field. So after graduating in 1966, he wanted to go ahead and start his promising baseball career. So
And was he able to do so?
Yes, he was. So he starts as the rookie shortstop in 1967, and he's doing some incredible work on
And
the
so
baseball
he was
field.
drafted to a professional team?
So he actually is drafted to the Atlanta Braves.
Okay.
But it was cut short. So prior to that, though, he was running 12 home runs and stole 28 bases.
My goodness.
And he was, playing for the minor leagues. He hit a .325 in the Class A affiliate. So
I have to say that I don't know. That means very little to me. I'm just going to admit.
I understand. I think that the baseball
I think it's
fans,
a good number.
Yes, would love those numbers. So he did have this promising career that was cut short when he was drafted.
He was drafted.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so he's assigned to the 1st Battalion, 7th Field Artillery Regiment in the 1st Infantry Division as well. He was killed in action as a 20-year-old, June 21st, 1968, and this would have been in Vietnam during a ground casualty that resulted with a hostile rocket that struck his military base. So he's also awarded pretty, wonderfully some different medals. So he does have the Purple Heart, the National Defense Medal, the Vietnam Campaign Medal, and the Vietnam Service Medal. And he's also revered within his own high school because he actually was inducted into their Athletic Hall of Fame in 2013.
Oh my goodness! Very recent. Very recent.
Yes.
The understanding that Jackie Robinson was drafted by the Dodgers, first African American. That's 47.
Right.
So 20 years later, we are still, and today we still revere what baseball managed to do and what Jackie Robinson managed to do.
Absolutely.
And so for Udell, you just have to know that he felt a way towards Jackie Robinson paving that way for him and him being able, because there aren't that many who can play professional baseball today.
Right.
Much less in the 60s.
Yes, but Udell Chambers did.
Yeah. You mentioned the Great Migration, too, with Mr. Brown. And you can go back, 9pbs.org, because we have had several conversations here about the Great Migration. And Henry Louis Gates did an incredible series about the Great Migration earlier this spring, I believe. And so to understand that St. Louis was a part of the Great Migration, this is African Americans who are leaving the violence of the South and looking for opportunity, then go north. They even go to Seattle to work in the shipyards, but St. Louis was a stop.
Yes.
And so many families are here because their grandparents and parents left Mississippi in the Great Migration as thousands and thousands, the largest move of human beings in the United States.
Yes, they left in droves.
Yeah. Right.
Definitely.
And so he is the product of that.
Yes.
Came to St. Louis and served our nation.
Yes, he did.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that story. And that one hits home for you and I both.
Yes.
As being the granddaughter and the daughter
Yes.
Of Vietnam veterans. And the History Museum did do an incredible Vietnam War exhibit.
Yes. Yes, it did. And so we actually are opening up and will have the Tuskegee Airmen exhibit. And so if viewers are interested in learning more about Black history, do come to Soldiers Memorial, where we will have an exhibit focusing on the Tuskegee Airmen. So there's lots there, and we welcome our viewers to come out because, as you know, we're all about preserving history and
Right.
sharing it more widely and more broadly to our community.
And have done a beautiful job in preserving our military history.
Yes.
Absolutely. Soldiers Memorial is, if you've not been, please go and take your children
Yes, definitely.
with you so they can see it
Yeah.
and understand it. Cicely Hunter, as always, thank you so much for enlightening us, improving our knowledge and awareness of who we were and therefore who we are right now.
Thank you so much, Carol.
Cicely Hunter is the public historian with the African American History Initiative at the Missouri Historical Society. We'll be back next week with a podcast, and you can go back and look at previous podcasts. As I mentioned, great conversation on the Great Migration, helping us to understand how it happened, why it happened, and the impact on St. Louis. And I just want you to keep in mind that there were things that happened here in St. Louis as a part of the Great Migration that had national effect. So we might be little old St. Louis, but we are on the map nationally in a variety of historic ways. And you can learn more about that by going to find our previous conversation on the Great Migration at 9pbs.org. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel. We'll be back next week with more.